Have you ever felt that quiet, persistent nug that's like, write your book, your story matters, but you're wondering, where do you even begin? How do you get started? You've had so many experiences in your vast life. You have so many lessons that you know you want to impart to the world, but writing a book seems like an incredibly daunting task. Today, we are diving into the question that bold visionary leaders and creatives are asking all the time. How do you take the story that's living inside of you and turn it into a book that not only impacts your world, but can help reshape the world? And more importantly, what happens when you stop waiting for permission and start writing the narrative that only you can tell? Amy Vogel is here because she believes in the revolutionary power of women's stories. She has built her life's work around helping bold women tell bold stories. Amy serves women who want to write boldly, visionaries who are ready to turn a lived experience into literature that disrupts, heals, and inspires. This is the Communication Queen podcast, where storytelling becomes sovereignty and your voice becomes your greatest visibility asset. Our mission here is to revolutionize the reign of your voice, helping leaders like you step out, get seen, and use the power of story to build movements, grow businesses, and transform lives. I'm Kimberly Spencer, your host, TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and the founder of Communication Queens and Crown Yourself. And my mission here is to celebrate and empower sovereign leaders to rise, speak, and serve with unapologetic clarity and courage. Because when you share your story boldly, you create a ripple effect far bigger than you can imagine. If you are ready to step into the boldest version of your voice, your story, and write the narrative that this world has been waiting for, then stick around because we are going to dive in with Amy Vogel. Welcome.
Woo! Preach, sister, preach. Wow. That was an amazing introduction. And, there's a part of me that kind of shrank like, oh no. And then there's another part of me that was like, oh no, no, we're doing this. We're doing this.
We're doing this. We're leaning in. And I think
I'm here.
that duality is so common when
Yeah.
writing your story, when sharing your story. I mean, one of my favorite stories that I shared in my book was one of our clients, Ashley Chamberlain. She is an incredibly successful businesswoman. And just by having her podcast bio read back to her and hearing it on repeat, she's like, oh my gosh, like, damn, I'm a badass. Like, being able to recognize and celebrate and validate yourself and the work that you're doing in the world. So what you're doing is so important for women being able to share their stories, because that's how we grow. What started you on this path?
Oh gosh, so many things. And it's an ever increasing call to rise, right? Like you start as a young woman, and for me, I started in sales. I didn't even start in the sales I wanted to do, and I just kind of stumbled into technology sales in the late 90s. So, like no clue, dot-com bubble right in the middle of it. No idea. All these shows that are out now about, the birth of the internet. Yeah, I was right in the middle of that and no clue. And so, starting that and then getting married and having kids and the various adventures of that, leaving my corporate job to stay at home for 10 years before then going into ministry. And it's like all of these, and there are lots of other things along the way that I experienced. But back in 2022, the ministry that I was a part of, the church I was a part of, imploded. And where I thought I was going to be the next Beth Moore, for those of you who know who Beth Moore is, and even had that, if you're in the church, spoken over me prophetically. It didn't happen. Didn't happen. I'm not even in church anymore. I'm not even a Christian anymore. It's just like one of those things where you know too much, how the sausage is made, and then you start questioning. And
Mm.
so really to answer your question, it was the questions that led me to where I am today. And I'm not even sure that I found the answers for all the questions, but what I found is purpose. And I think that's more important than the actual answers. We spend so much time twisting ourselves up in knots as to why something happened. And I think the how of it is more important. And that's the power of the story is not necessarily the what. It's not always the lesson. the moral of the story. It's the how the story happened where you see yourself. And so, for me in writing these books, I have 5 books out now. I'm working on 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And it continues to come back to these questions. Again, kind of stumbled into it like I did in the dot-com bubble. I've stumbled into this movement of women rising and waking up and coming into their power. And our stories are what set us free, but we got to know what they are first. And, being on podcasts and talking about it continues to help me understand my own story and what that means and how that plays out for my purpose in the world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's so much power in living in the question. And when I know for me growing up, I always wanted to find the answer and have the right answer because
Yeah.
recovering perfectionist right here. So I had to have the right answer, straight A's. Like, let's
Yeah.
find the right answer. There's so much validation, especially in traditional education, that is geared toward rewarding you finding the right answer. And I think as you grow up and as you evolve, you realize that there's more power in living in the question and in the curiosity that comes from it and the different divergent paths that stem from it. So because life is not linear. And I love
No.
your backstory because it reminds me very much of mine of just the circular lessons that come in from different spaces and places and lives. I had one of my friends said, she was like, Kim, you flip like 9 lives in one. And I see that with so many people who are in the business of storytelling and communicating that because there's a versatility that you have that you're able to communicate to so many different people because you've lived so many different lives.
Yeah, and it's crazy too. I think this is a quintessential feminine gift as we are constantly creating and recreating the whole cycle. And I'm very much into this in my spiritual practice. And it's, you see it in lots of different religions and even in Christianity, but that idea of life, death, and rebirth. And I'm telling you, like women are the originators of that. And so, for me, it's just one of those things where whether you want to call it a new season, whatever, like this is a new iteration and in every age and every stage, you get to live into that. And what I truly hope for is that we tell our stories in such a way that changes the narratives for the generations coming up, the generations of women in particular, but men too, boys and girls. I'm a big humanist in that way, but in the sense that they have the permission much earlier than we did
Yeah.
to explore, to reclaim some of these ancient truths because they're all kind of from the same source. I mean, I'm a theology nerd and that's not just Christian theology. I do a lot of study and a lot of research and they all have very similar origins, whether those are pagan, whether those are Christian, whether those are, Islamic. Like everybody got a revelation from somewhere, what felt like outside of themselves, but really it comes from within and they live into that purpose. And so I just want girls, especially because I'm a girl mom, I want them to do that earlier than I did. I was in my 40s before I started asking these questions. And I know I'm not alone in that,
Yep.
but the questions were there in my 30s. The questions were there in my 20s. The questions were there as a teenager. And, I finally gave myself permission to look at them. And one of the ways that I love to use when I was preaching and even now when I give talks is there's an idea. It's from the Jewish culture where specifically the Jewish rabbinical teaching method is where you take a verse and you turn it and look at it from like a gem from multiple facets, from multiple angles. And in the Jewish faith, doubt and questions are not a sign of not having enough faith. They're the sign of more faith.
Hmm.
And I learned that back in 2020 when I was preaching online, and I was actually preaching a sermon called We Question. And, our Christian spiritual traditions are about questions. And that I see now how that is carried over into my authorship and my entrepreneurship and the way I coach women. Like, you may not get the answers, but you will get what you need in the process of looking for them.
I love that you and I could go down some serious rabbit holes in terms of being theology nerds. Like
Yeah.
this side of my bookshelf is all business and structure. This side is all like esoteric Christianity and Gnosticism and Buddhism and just I love the stories and the multiple layers of understanding. And I think, certain texts no matter what book you read, you're going to read it from the level of consciousness that you're operating on. And I've had that with business books that I've gone back years later and was like, oh my God, how have I not been implementing this from something that was super valuable that I highlighted, but at the time I wasn't yet ready to integrate it or embody it. And now I am. And so I think that there's layerings, and that's the power of story is and the power of the process of the questions of birthing a book. And it does feel like labor. We've
Yep.
had several authors on this podcast who have said that, interestingly enough, the journey of writing the book and publishing it and getting it out into the world was very cyclical
Mhm.
to the experience living in the book, but in a different form. And
Absolutely.
I've always said, like, it's not new level, new devils. It's new level. It's the same damn devil. It's just in a different outfit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I recently ran into that. So the books coming out after that are all novellas. I've chosen to like not write full novels for various reasons, but mostly because I want to get through this series and start working on the next one. It is what it
Yep.
is.
Yep.
In fact, I've already started research for the next series, and I'm like, we're not even like haven't even finished the first book yet on the current series. But I really had to, and it's not, I don't like the term imposter syndrome because I don't feel like an imposter. I just feel not capable. I
Hmm.
just feel like I don't have enough experience. I don't have enough, right? Like there's that constant duality as women where we're either too much or we're not enough. And after the manuscript came back from the dev editor, I spent a month not feeling like I could finish this book. And I finally, and I bought several several books and just started exploring the craft. And that's really what I wanted with this book, was to become a better writer. And so I hired a really good editor, and she just, she nailed me to the wall. And my God, I paid her a lot of money to do it. So, I had to really sit with that and be uncomfortable with that. I had to look at, and it was only last week that I really got the clarity to say, I'm holding the story. I'm the one that's holding the story back. I don't want my character to transform. I want her to stay safe. I want her to stay okay. She can't. She can't. She has to become the anti-heroine. She cannot continue to be the heroine, because as women, we are both that, right? Like we are both the friend, the daughter, the wife, the soft place, and we're also the warrior. We're also
Hmm.
the ones out there who are the mama bears. And so I have to reflect that through my character's experience and let her speak for herself. It's just crazy. When I realized that, I was like, no. And so I got on a conference with my editor, and we walked through it for an hour. I paid her for an extra session. And I just told her, I was like, look, I'm stuck. I'm not in writer's block, but I am stuck. And we talked through it. And guess what? The Red Sea opened, if you will. The way parted, the door just like blew itself open, and the creativity is back. There was a part of me that knew that would happen, but at the same time, you doubt.
Yeah.
And so, like that, I wasn't an imposter. I just didn't feel like I had enough to tell the story. But here's the truth of it: you don't have enough when you start writing your story. You get the enough, you get it as you write the story. It is a process to live through, not something that you are capable of doing right from the very start. It's like therapy. You are not the person you want to be when you start working with the therapist. That's why you go to the therapist. So you have to surrender to that process. And I was fighting the surrender. And so when I finally was just like, you know what? I got to admit this out loud to somebody and I need help. That's when the way forward became obvious, like really super obvious. But I needed the help. I need somebody in the forest with me, because I could only see the trees. She could pull up, because she actually has read the book. She could pull up and see the path.
And I think there comes that point in a narrative arc where you meet a guide. Like, you got to have a guide. There comes a mentor, a
Yep.
guide. And having studied storytelling and been a screenwriter, like as I wrote in my book, there's only about 7 stories. If you deflect from those, then actually, like I've seen, that's how films flop.
Yep.
If you become divergent from those 7 basic stories. And it's because in the human experience, just like you experience, you needed that guide. You needed to meet that guide for the journey. And I think that that's why the marketing side of a book becomes that next layer of discovery. And even if the character is yourself and it's a memoir, or the character are the lessons and arcs that you're exploring in a business book,
Mhm.
it's suddenly the character becomes you, and you're front and center, and you're promoting the book, and you're putting yourself out there. And sometimes I know from my acting background, like sometimes that's the hardest project to sell is yourself,
Yeah.
and not in like a prostitution way. The hardest product because you're like, you see who you think you are, but then the whole world has its perceptions and how those match, how those play into how you're promoting the book. It's like a trifecta of how to market. So when you're working with your authors through their bold stories, what are the biggest marketing snags that they come up against once they've either finished the book or in the process of writing the book?
Yeah. So this is actually where my specialty as a business person comes in is the realization that books are business. And for a long time, because books are works of art, they're creations you birth into the world, it feels like you're dirtying them, you're sullying them, to use a literary word, when you talk about business. But the truth of the matter is, it always has been, always. It's just typically other people have handled that side. But if you're going to self-publish or you're going to hybrid publish, or even guess what, if you're going to traditionally publish, you as an author will be ultimately responsible for the success of that book. That is one of the undercover secrets that people get in here and into publishing and realize, even if you're traditionally published, because I have been, they own it for about a month. About a month and a half. And then they're like, what are you doing? Where's your platform? Where are you speaking? Where are you promoting it? And so for me, where I come in and where I'm really, really good is I'm very good at vision. That was a skill I had in the ministry. It was a skill I had in sales for other people, not for myself, obviously. I could pull back and look. I could be the one that goes above the trees, that sees the way out of that hedge maze, if you will.
Mhm.
So, and so if you're going to write a book, or you're in the process of writing a book, or even if you've published a book, you've got to have goals. You've got to have a vision for how you want that book to serve. Because the other thing about the creative process is, like pregnancy, like having a child, there comes a point of differentiation. When you give birth to that child is no longer part of you. That child is now on their own journey. So as you go through each draft, there is differentiation that happens. So yes, the book is you, but at the same time, it's not. So again, there's a lot of duality. I'm really into dualities lately. I'm exploring a lot of it in my writing and just life in general and noticing it. But if you can acknowledge from the very beginning the vision that you want to have for the book and start the differentiation process really early, then that's super helpful, because then you have goals for it. And guess what? Those goals evolve. You don't start with, I made the mistake of my first fiction book declaring and manifesting it would be a New York Times bestseller. Spoiler alert, that's really, really difficult, almost impossible for self-published books, especially first-time fiction authors. Like, it just
Mhm.
doesn't happen, but there's no such thing as an overnight success. But that's what I was declaring. Does it mean that maybe she will be at some point? Who knows? But that's no longer the goal. So you start with goals, you start with vision, you start with how you want this book to serve you, how you want this book to serve in the world. And the earlier you can start that process and have the parallel paths of business and creativity, the more successful and confident you're going to feel. Because that's really the key of it. And this is what I tell people all the time. Book sales, royalties, numbers are not ever going to make you feel successful more than for just a split second. Do I check my KDP dashboard every day? Yeah. And I'm kind of like, now why? Why? Because it's keeping me in a mindset of scarcity. Whereas if I look at all the people that I've helped, all the readers that I've connected with, if I've looked at the fact that in the last 3 years, I've published 4 books, that's really successful. And I've helped more than 20 women publish their stories. Like, those are different kind of metrics. And so how I'm serving in the world, how my books, how my practice is serving is a much better measure of my success and my impact than how many books I've sold. Although that's
Yep.
pretty remarkable for an independent self-published author too. So that both ends, stop looking at, and this, this comes from manifestation and kind of new age practices. You don't look at the outcome, you look at how you want to feel about it. And then you set goals around how you want to feel around it. And then the outcomes take care of themselves.
100%. And I think that was understanding what is the feeling of the book getting out into the world. What is the feeling of, like, it's what I say with all my clients with any goal, whether it's like a weight loss goal, a business
Yeah.
revenue goal, book sales goal, a goal to get to bestseller. It's like, well, what does that feel like? once you're on the other side, like once I got to bestseller, as much as powerful as that moment was of being able to experience that, and what was more powerful was being able to experience that in community with my readers, with the people who have helped me promote and having it be a we win, not just a me win. And then beyond that, like once I achieved that, I was like, oh, that's kind of no big deal. Now, once you know how the sausage is made, once you know how to do it, and it's like my mentor, Brendan Burchard. He gets a ton of people on asking him how to become a New York Times bestseller. He's like, I know he's done it. But once you kind of know it's the journey of the process of figuring it out. Like I know how
Yeah.
to get a billboard in Times Square very easily
Yeah.
and like shockingly easily, but I know how the sausage is made. So
Yeah.
now those posts don't have as much of a celebrity effect. It's kind of like the fact that I grew up in Los Angeles and
Mm,
people are like, "Oh my god, what
yeah.
celebrities did you know?" And I was like, several. But at the same time, it's like no big deal because it's not that future version of you is not chasing that. And that's where the magic comes in of manifestation and of understanding the power of your own imagination. For those people going on their first podcast, going promoting their first book, it's like
Yeah.
there's a moment of fear and of the excitement, but also the exhilaration, but also the nervousness that comes from it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's an imposter syndrome. I completely agree with you. I think that imposter syndrome simply just means you're choosing to play in a bigger room. You're
Yeah.
choosing to play a bigger game.
It's new.
Yeah.
You don't know. If you've never been on a podcast before, you don't know the fact that it's just a fun conversation with hopefully somebody who's not going to ask you really weird questions. Cause I've been on those podcasts too.
Those
Oh
podcasts
my
too.
God. Like now I do a lot better job vetting now. I'm like, oh, but it was new. And so
Uh-huh.
now when people ask, what's your advice or, you even ask me like, do you have any questions? We're just going to talk. We're just going to, yeah, but I didn't know that. And a lot of people don't know that. And the first time you get on stage, in fact, it's so funny because all three of my kids saw me through my ministry journey and I was on stage every week doing some form of what they say in the church, some kind of exhortation or actual preaching. And every single week for almost 10 years. And so getting on stage now, I know I have a gift for that. I also know that the people in the audience don't know what I'm going to say. Ha ha. That's the trick of the trade. They don't know what you left out. They don't know what you're going to say. So don't stress about it. But I have that practice. And on Saturday, my youngest was with me at a book event and we took a selfie and she was like, have the perfect smile every time. And I'm like, I have practiced. I know the angles. I know how much of my teeth to show. In fact, there are pictures out there where I've showed too much of my teeth and I look like I'm like ready to bite, like too many teeth, like it's just practice. And I've also let go of the fact that everything is going to be perfect. Hi, also recovering perfectionist. So it is just one of those things where if you focus much more on how you feel in the journey, which at the end, if you do any study of myths, like you were referencing, finding a guide, that we know about that from Joseph Campbell's work and the Hero with a
Mhm.
Thousand Faces. And you sometimes you yourself show up as your own guide. Sometimes it's somebody else. Sometimes it's supernatural help. And the reality is that it's all practice. And as women, we are wired to want more. There is nothing wrong with wanting more. So when you get bestseller status, you're like, yeah, great. I already felt that way. I already knew it. Now I'm on to another dream. Great. So that's actually for me, that's one of the hardest things. I had the hardest time celebrating because I'm already on to the next thing. Like
Yep.
you heard me say, I got, I'll be at 10 books and I'm already working on the next series. So I'm like, but celebration is important.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where you just have to be a part of the process. It's like jumping in the river. I mean, we're in Texas, so we float the river. You just got to go where the river is going to take you. And you can do a little adjustment, but for the most part, you're just along for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think knowing when it's time to also paddle,
Yeah.
as because there's a misconception with flow that I've been talking a lot with my clients
Mm.
about because they're like, I want more flow. And I'm like, sometimes flow, like I have whitewater river rafted. That's flow. Like
Yep.
you are paddling like hell. It's flow. It's fast and you're going to be working. And there's a level of devotion to being super present to where you're at and knowing that this paddling season is not going to be forever. Because as soon
Yeah.
as you get past the rapids, the river's going to flow a lot more smoother and faster because you went through those rapids. So when you're going through the rapids of the creative process or even the marketing process, trying to figure
Yeah.
out your strategy or figuring out or going on the podcast and fumbling on one and having
Yeah.
that one where they ask you the weird question
Yeah.
or going on the ones that are great. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to promote it. But then they forget to distribute the episode
Yeah.
or tell you when there's all sorts of things that can go awry, but you're just in the process of paddling and trusting that as you continue to go through those rapids, the river's going to speed up. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not surprised that you're already on like the next series mentally while you're currently
Mhm.
writing the first because you've published so fast with
Right.
4 books in 3 years.
Right.
So for those authors, like I have a goal where I want to publish a book a year for the next 13 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm on so far so good. We've got 2 in the bank. We've got the Make Every Podcast Want You that came out last year. And then the It's Just a Fart children's book is coming out this
Yeah.
year. I was able
Yeah.
to just like squeeze it in
Yeah.
right before the new year. But I know it's an ambitious goal. And I know that there's a level of devotion that it does require in the growth phase of who that's going to make me become
Yeah.
rather than hitting it and like knocking it out of the park. I'm probably going to write a book that sucks at some point.
But you know what? Okay, so 2 things. First, the sermons I thought were the weakest, or the talks, or the chapters, or whatever
Mhm.
that I thought were the weakest, I got the most positive feedback on. I don't understand it, but the ones you like the least, like, it's okay to admit that. The things you like the least are the ones that speak the loudest to the people who need it. It's just some kind of magic. But also, you have diversified. So let me speak this into existence. Can you write a 120,000 word novel every year? I would not suggest it. But can you write a book a year? Yes, because you have diversified what that means for you. I mean,
Mhm.
we've talked about all your projects. And so it is absolutely possible. By the way, 13 is a magic number. Everybody says it's unlucky, but it's very much
No,
a
it's a magic number.
yep. And is absolutely possible because you've got a wide base to choose from, whether it's business, whether it's fiction, whether it's children's. You are building the foundation for publishing and understanding the timeline. And that's the other thing that most new authors don't know, however you're publishing, the timeline is something that I didn't know. It's why I chose to self-publish my second book, because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn what this business was about and the different pieces that are involved in it. It's not just writing, it's not just editing, it's freaking formatting, it's metadata. Then you get into promotion. I always tell people there's the writing phase, the publishing phase, and then there's the promotion phase. And then you just keep going through that same life cycle. And so you have diversified and you're laying a foundation for the experience of multiple different projects. Maybe you come out with a workbook or a journal next. I don't know, but you pull all the content is already there, or it will be there when you need it. And you just pull from it. And you make magic happen. So I can't wait. I'm coming in at book 2. I can't wait for the next 11 years and then by the time you publish that 13th book, you're like, yeah, I'm already, book 20 is already in the works.
Yeah, already in the works. And already, maybe by then it'll be a traditional publish, but like right now I'm loving the autonomy and personal responsibility that comes with self-publishing. And I
Absolutely.
think something that scares a lot of people is like we are so conditioned to divest our power into someone else, into someone coming to save us, a
Yep.
publisher, a marketer. You're going to do this for me. And I can tell you, I have heard the horror stories of some publishers, of hybrid publishers. I have heard the
Yep.
horror stories. I have clients who have experienced the horror stories. And there was something so powerful of like, no, I want my company as an asset to own the book
Yeah.
because that's thinking like a business person. And I love that you brought up the business of writing because I remember years and years ago, I was 15 years old. I was in improv classes because I wanted to be working in Hollywood and
Mm.
I wanted to be acting and writing. And it was my improv teacher who said, Kim, it's called show business. You need to learn business. And she goes, business is actually a bigger word than the show part. You have to learn the business of what it takes to promote it, to distribute it, to get it out there into the world. And that lesson truly stuck with me throughout my life and over 20 years now is
Yeah.
honoring the business side of providing a service, even if that service is just pure entertainment from some just smut novel.
Absolutely. Although I will tell you, and I've been on multiple podcasts preaching this message, smut healed me.
Oh,
I I didn't grow up in a super fundamentalist purity culture, but it seeped in. I mean, I was born in 75. And so we still had a lot of that, still had so much of it actually. And still, even it just takes, it's a shapeshifter. It takes on different forms.
yeah.
And so for me, getting out of the church, getting out of that system where it is repressive, it is still you're in a very liberal denomination, very liberal church. Our culture swims in those waters of holding women back, of women staying skinny. I've heard this so many times, women being skinny. Well, you can't fight if you're malnourished. Like you can't
True.
be empowered. And that is not what women's bodies were designed to do. So, it's just one of those things that for me, when I started reading smut, and I've read lots of it, and I'm now more or less a connoisseur of it. It has to be good. I'm super bougie when it comes to books, but I do want my heat. I want my spice because it's real and it changes you and it changes the way you see yourself and it makes you more fun and adventurous and just breaks you out of those molds that we are taught, we are indoctrinated with. And so I'm a huge fan of smut. I'm a huge fan of women reading things that make them feel good, that help us experience pleasure because we are denied that in so many different areas. Our culture is about work. And so to
Mhm.
experience pleasure is revolutionary.
And I love that. I think that's the beauty of the marketing process of a book is how do you find pleasure in being seen? Because that's a whole other level of being seen in your creativity, being seen in your light, being seen as a woman, as an author, as a creator. Like that's big time goddess energy. Like the
Yeah,
creation.
that's power right there. Like that is it. And I love to watch the women that I started working with 3, 4 years ago and watch their evolution because it empowers me. We are not meant to stay the same. We are meant to grow. Let me quote the Shawshank Redemption, get busy living or get busy dying. And so we are always meant to be pressing into that edge. And for some people, that means, you know, trying some really, really kinky stuff. More power to you. I know what my kinks are at this point. Maybe they change. I don't know. But at the same time, it's all right. I've had to I'm kind of vanilla. I'm okay with that too. Okay with that too. So is my partner. It's just about what you're comfortable with. And maybe that's not your thing. Maybe you explore pleasure in other ways through letting yourself eat. Oh my gosh, letting yourself enjoy food, letting yourself enjoy the process of exercise, being outside, enjoying your children for the people that they are meant to be. So it's just this countercultural movement of women owning freaking their life, owning enjoyment that is so incredible to see because we can get so caught up in the trauma and the pain. And
Yeah.
but shadow only works with light and light only works with shadow. And so we got to have the duality again. Maybe that's the title of this episode. Like it's all about duality. And in publishing, in writing stories, those are what are the best ones is where you see the dark and the light of a character and that journey.
Yeah, I mean, look at Darth Vader in Star Wars, like iconic character. And there's duality there. There is the light and the power, and it's all comes down to that power of choice in the choices that you make. And I think that when you look at the promotional journey of a book, it does come back down to choice as well, is the choice of are you choosing to lead with the book, allowing it to be seen? Are you choosing to promote it? Like everybody has a baby shower, but most people like quietly release their book and they're like, I kind of wrote a book. By the way,
Yeah.
I wrote it and here's can you make it an Amazon bestseller? But I don't know. Okay.
Right. Right. I have been called in various situations a book doula, which is really, really cool because I went to school, I went to college for pre-med. And so the idea of the process of birth, and as a woman and having been through it 3 times, like that, just growing into that, helping bring things into the world is really really powerful. And it's just a journey. It's just a journey. And so when we are comfortable with that journey and we are comfortable with I wouldn't say even comfortable. That sounds too easy. When we are leaning into the discomfort to become comfortable, that's really where our power is. And I just really love how we can hold multiple things in tension. That's what we do. That's what we do. That's what we're here to do and enjoy it.
Exactly. Exactly. Amy, you and I could go on many a tangent and talk
Hours,
for
hours
quite
and
some
hours.
time
Yes.
about many a thing.
Yes.
Where can our audience find you? How can we work with you? How can we get your support in birthing our books into the world?
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that. I was actually preparing in my mind trying something new with my calls to action.
Ooh, I love it.
So,
Something new. Let's test it out. Let's play.
like in podcasts, I'm like, oh, go to my website. But for me, if you are a reader and you want to understand the empowerment and the boldness of the stories that I tell, go to my website and sign up for my newsletter. That's probably the easiest way. I talk a lot about my books and the inspiration for my books on my Instagram. I'm everywhere at Amy W. Vogel, my pen name. In life, you'll just know me as Amy Vogel, but the books have the W in it. And for those who are wanting to write their stories, I think that the biggest thing is whether you've published or you're looking to publish and you're on the fiction side, I've got coaching for that. I also work with female coaches, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders to write from word one. And what I'm doing in the new year, something really cool, is I'm starting a mastermind anthology, and it's called Look for the Yes. And so I'm working on connecting with the women who will be a part of that, where you just have to write a chapter, but in community, where you are literally writing with other women. And the purpose of this book is to create a playbook for women in business. We're not going by the old playbook that we all learned in business school. Women do it differently. So let's show other women how to do that differently. So if you're interested in any of that, obviously my website is a great place to start. I've got coaching and I've got this exclusive invite only anthology mastermind that I'm launching in the new year. But I'll talk to anybody about it at any time.
Amazing. Amy, it has been such a pleasure having you on. And I would love to have you back to talk some even deeper marketing strategy. I think we went
Yes.
really high level and expansive. And
Yeah.
I would love to have you back in the future to talk like going micro into deeper strategy. So if you're
Yes.
open, yes, Queen. As always, your story has the power to save at least one life. So go out there and let your voice be heard.
Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. For more tips on guest podcasting, storytelling, and communication strategies, follow us on social media at Communication Queens Agency and visit us at communicationqueens.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And in the meantime, remember, your story has the power to save one life. Let your story and your voice be heard.